Greetings and welcome to the presidential debate of OPP 2024. This is where you will hear actual candidates for the White House debate the issues facing America today. I am your host, Emiliano Limon, and I would like to begin by offering some background on this project. OPP 2024 stands for Other Presidential Potentials in 2024. This concept arose from the fact that most presidential elections over the past few decades have resulted in just two candidates, namely a Democrat and a Republican. The 2024 election is unique because the same two main competitors from 2020 are going at it again, which begs the question, is there anyone else to run for the White House? According to the Federal Election Commission website, more than 1,300 people have filed to run for president in 2024. I went through the list and randomly selected and contacted several dozen candidates. The result? Only 7 agreed to be spotlighted on my podcast at opp2024us.com. Considering the main presidential debate will be taking place very soon, I decided to invite several of those candidates to participate in this OPP 2024 presidential debate. First, some rules on this debate. This will be a live-to-tape recording, meaning no editing except for technical issues like connection drops or audio problems. Secondly, the format will involve debate and conversation. The debate portion will involve me introducing a scenario, and each candidate will have a minute to present their solution, which will then be followed with a debate about those solutions. The conversation portion will be the presentation of a topic in which myself and the candidates will have a conversation about that topic. With that, let us begin. Our first candidate is Jay Torres, who hails from West Virginia. Next is Jorge Zavala from California. Our last candidate is Susan Bruxer Lahaki from West Virginia. Welcome to all of you. My first question, the U.S. economy. By one set of metrics, joblessness is at a relatively low rate. The stock market performance is doing well. The inflation rate seems to be declining with the latest number at 3.3%. Yet people still have anxiety over paying their bills, groceries, and services, finding and buying a home, and not to mention finding and keeping a job. And then there are the impoverished. Current federal statistics put it at about 40 million people. Do you believe the president has the power to make the economy work for everyone? If so, what would be your solution? Susan, you can begin.
Okay. Thanks that you're organizing this and that we can be here together. So I think we need to focus exactly on our country. So we have a lot of issues here. Road work is really one that needs work on. You know, the paint is coming off all the streets and lots of signs are covered with brush or even, ripped down or knocked over, and they take forever to put back out. So infrastructure is really something we need to work on. That would create a lot of jobs and get the economy, it provides money and then people can have money to spend, right? So the other thing is taxes. I think we don't need federal income tax on people who earn under $100,000. It's too much to pay all the taxes that we pay on other things like gas and cigarettes and food and entertainment and everything else. We don't need to burden people making under $100,000 with taxes for the federal system. If the states want to tax their people, that's up to them, but I don't think we need that. What I would do is add a little bit like what Trump said, was add some, make the tariffs a bit higher on things coming in from other countries, because we need to shop locally. We need to start focusing on our people and keeping the work here, training our people. The other program I have is getting young people involved in apprenticeship programs. So we have in every state the apprenticeship program, but it's being way underutilized. So I would like to abolish high school and start the kids working already at 14, 15, and 16 so that they can learn how to be productive citizens and be part of the community and gain pride in doing everyday activities. And then they have some pocket money too. So instead of having eventually so many people with student loan debt, we'll avoid that by giving them careers already when they're 18. They'll already be working. So these are some of my ideas.
That's a very forward thinking solution. Jorge, what is your solution for this?
First of all, I think the stats and the census and the polls are inaccurate. Inflation is very high. I think these polls are just for Biden's sake to get more votes. Number two is breaking limitations on capitalistic America, the oligarchy that's between the poor, mid class, and they're too rich. There's such a big gap. They need to be taxed more to balance out the economy. We need to set forth um, more small businesses. We got to start producing here in America. We also need what I propose, since we're not backed by the petrodollar anymore, is what I call the techno dollar. The American dollar is not backed by anything. I propose bringing Taiwan into American grounds, thus for saving the next war. Number two is bringing our economy and the intelligence that's needed to produce this manufacturing of chips so we can have a dominance over the global threat of China. But and then also is bringing the economy back. I think what Susan also said is very profound, is that we need to instill economics into our youth. Vocational training and job placement through school development is quite necessary. We need to have a future. We need to project that future. We need to have goals. And also create bonds for children that are born, so when they become of age going to school, that it's already paid for. The money is there. And it will support the economy. So I think if we do these, we'll be safe and sound.
All right, Jorge and Susan, you have some agreement in some of your solutions. Jay, what's yours?
First of all, I wanted to thank you, Emiliano, and the OPP for having myself and our splendid guests here. I just wanted to make certain that I heard correctly, Susan, that you had mentioned about doing away with school at the high school level. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, you
Okay.
did, yeah. And replace it with apprenticeship programs. For 3 years, the kids go to work. They also go to school. So it's like 1 to 2 days a week at school, and the other like 2 or 3 or 4 days would be working. So they're working while learning and doing, and it's a great combination. I've seen it work all over Europe.
Okay, well, perhaps it works there in Europe, overseas, but in America, we've pretty much been groomed for the last 3 to 4 decades with the whole idea of go to school, get the good grades, get the education, get a job, and you make it, right? But what does make it mean in the year 2024? What does it mean for the next generation that's coming up soon? Taking that hard right turn and doing away with education at that level at high school, I think is not the right answer. I think we need to go and avail our young minds more education, because knowledge is power, quite frankly. Now, I don't believe that simply by having a degree on the wall, which I don't have these large, big degrees, I don't and the name recognition and whatnot as other candidates, but certainly broadening your minds can only be done by experience, travel, and education. So I would continue the education, but I would build upon what you mentioned about bringing trade schools back, because in the late '80s, especially particularly in Brooklyn, New York, where I was born and raised, that was one of the key things that a lot of inner city neighborhoods depended on, were these skilled trades where you can learn automobile mechanics, or you can learn about finance, or you can learn about entrepreneurism or whatnot. And a lot of the money that seeded that pretty much went away. But let's get back to the U.S. economy. What's going to fix it? I don't believe that. It doesn't matter how much you go and increase salaries. That's not the key. The key is being able to raise the salary, but at the same token, keep the industries from raising the cost for products. 20 years ago, it didn't cost an arm and a leg, even simply for a bank loan or a car. But these days, it takes quite a lot, in addition to having credit and a great FICO score to go and make these large purchases. The U.S. economy back in 2022, the GDP was only 2.7%. In 2023, the third quarter, it jumped to 4.5%. And why did it jump so drastically? It was due to all the money that President Biden, our current administration, was throwing out to folks right after the COVID. But what happened afterwards? Now you've seen a steady decline in the GDP. And that's where we're having problems. As the next American president, I will push for manufacturing strongly in the United States. And so that way there's a lot less self-reliance on other countries and their products. Bring back manufacturing, keep the cost of products from the manufacturers low, and keep ahead of inflation, and we should do well.
Let me bring up another aspect of all this that is continuously there, but I rarely hear people actually tackling it aggressively, and it's that of poverty. The U.S. is known as the richest nation in the world, but yet tens of millions of people are continuously in this cycle of poverty from generation after generation. What's your solution to help them to get into and enjoy the fruits of a good U.S. economy?
It takes a lot. First of all, it takes a willingness of Congress. And for me, I really don't believe that the problems that we have right now are intertwined with the executive branch. For me, they dwell upon that these problems exist because of the legislative branch, Congress. They're the ones that pass the laws on how much money you're going to pay for child care, how much money you're going to pay for child support, what is the minimum, the salaries you're making. All that is done by the legislative branch. And so there's a lot of pivoting that's going on in Capitol Hill because they don't want the 340 million Americans plus to identify the root of the problem. The root of the problem, quite honestly, and it's a hard thing to say sometimes, but it's the truth. The truth is the truth. The problem lies in the legislative branch. And if they had fixed the problem 10, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be in the situation we are now. We've given $12.4 billion to Ukraine, $3.3 billion to Israel, $2.2 billion to Ethiopia, and the list goes on and on and on. That's just in 2022. And it's kind of ironic that all this money is thrown out there to some of these countries where there's civil unrest, there's wars going that are occurring. And of course, we're still dealing with with the terrorist activity. So a lot of that money was pretty much earmarked with Operation Enduring Freedom and other military affiliated stances. And so, as far as the poverty is concerned, Congress, those that are up there that have been sitting in their seats, I call them the Jurassic period politicians, because they never want to leave their seats. They just want to stay there in power, continue to go and pad their wallets, on and divert attention to the executive branch. All we can do as an executive leader is to garner the support of the American people and use that as leverage to Congress, and that'll fix the poverty that we have, the systemic poverty.
Okay, Susan, Jorge?
I believe Jay's on the right path with Congress. The first thing that we have to do is break the lobbyists. If you can see, they get about $1 million each year from AT&T, Apple, and all these conglomerate capitalistic fascists, which breaks the society. They're there to step on our face. Our representatives don't care about the mid-class and poor. They will not fight and support. The only thing they're fighting for is their own pockets, and to, as Jay's mentions, is to stay in position. Every 2 years, they keep going through elections, and so they're not focused on us, they're focused on them. So false representation of our leaders needs to be broken and stabilized and reformed and developed with new fresh blood as the presidents come in.
Okay, Susan.
So I just want to say first that actually you said we're the richest country in the world, and that's not actually true. We have the biggest economy, yes. That makes us the shoppers of the world. And that's why we have so much debt in this country, because everybody is shopping and buying things that they can't afford on credit, and then they end up having to pay 2 and 3 times for the same product. So that's why, we have to get people into a better way of using money. And this is why we need to train children already when they're 14, 15, and 16, how to earn money, how to respect that money, and how to save that money, so that they don't go into debt to get a job, because they've already got one. By the time they're 18, they're prepared, they're ready, they can work. They're earning a little bit of money, and if they want to go on to further education, they can. But it's not going to cost that much. Life is long. We're going to always be learning. So you will always be spending money on education. It doesn't have to be done all at one time, and you don't have to go in debt to do it. And so apprenticeships is one way, but we have to, it's okay being the biggest economy. We can stay being the biggest economy, but we need to learn how to spend money better, because even our own country is really in debt now. But I would like to introduce paying mothers. This is a career that has gone thanklessly for a long time without pay. And right now there are little entitlements or little things out there, tokens for motherhood, but it's not enough to live on. And mothers have to sometimes decide, do I get that job or do I stay home and love my kids? And this is not fair. And we've seen what this does to generations of kids. We've been pushing them through, and they can't balance a budget. They can't keep their spending under control. And this is, and then we've got, drug addiction. We've got rapes and killings and shootings. So, and these are often done by young people. And this is exactly why we need to bring moms home, and we need to pay them a reasonable salary so that they can raise their kids and love their kids as they should.
Okay, Susan, I thank you for that explanation of motherhood. We're actually going to revisit an aspect of that in about another question or so. But my next question is the following. This year marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a global event that saw numerous nations band together to end the hateful regimes of Germany and Japan. Since then, the U.S. has essentially become the police force of the free world. Given the terrible battle between Israel and Hamas, along with the war between Ukraine and Russia, is the U.S. forever inhabiting the role as the main defender of itself and its allies? Or should the U.S. be focused more on its own shores and interests? Jay.
Well, as the dominant world leader, because that's what we're viewed as, that's what we are, in more areas than one. And by the way, we might not be the richest country, Susan, but we give a lot more money than other countries do. So in total, we're giving billions of dollars to other countries annually. It's like it's earmarked within our budget. But
why? And we don't have money for mothers?
We do. And for me, the money exists, even though it's fiat money, which is, quite frankly, like was mentioned before, it's not backed by anything, quite frankly, but that's another issue in itself. I think that we're always going to be looked at, that we're always going to be viewed upon as the go-to person, so to speak, to go and deal with these, international issues, whether it be militarily or even corralling the world globally on a global efforts such as, climate change and items like that.
Okay. Jorge, your solution about the position.
Global threat needs global democracy. The stand and position that we have in the United States needs to be taken a little bit more seriously, because we are leading and everyone's watching. We have the ability to set forth the control and pathways of how we wish to stabilize democracy. Number one, negotiation is always necessary in trade. To find a balance of equal ground within these countries, which is not being done right now. Okay, so that's the first problem. Number two, take affirmative action like we did in World War II, is to stop the threat. Stop waiting and sitting on the fence. We must take affirmative action and take it. The best defense sometimes is offense. And allowing Russia to span, grow forth, rise into Iran, and while China and North Korea are watching, paying attention. Then we got Cuba right there in our back door. We're allowing this because of corporate America. We're paying for war. We're playing both sides. And it's not working out, is it? So I think we need to take a more stronger approach as we have the power in our hands, is that we're not looking at democracy, we're looking at corporate express.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jorge. Susan, your solution.
Well, I have to admit, so I've done some new reading lately, which has led me to believe that actually our getting involved or World War II was about still spreading Christianity. So there's this Zionist movement that has been trying to bring on the second coming of Jesus. And it started already like 120 years ago in Basel, Switzerland, actually. And then they sort of, I guess, infiltrated different countries and different governments. And they've been slowly orchestrating the world to World War III. And we are on the brink of World War III right now as we speak. So we need to sit down to the negotiating table and we need to start talking. If the religious extremists that I think might be in power are really in power, then
I'm sorry, let me stop you there. You said negotiating table. Negotiating with who?
Well, we need to have a ceasefire first. But the point is that if we're talking with religious Christian extremists, they're not going to ceasefire because they're trying to bring Jesus back. So they're going to go full force. I mean, we saw what Nikki Haley wrote on that bomb. She's one of them, clearly. And so the Zionist movement needs to be stopped. They're trying to bring World War III so that Jesus will come back and the end of times will happen. So we need to also get these extremists out of our country, like a Nikki Haley. She should never be back in office anywhere after that stunt she did in Israel. It was insulting to everyone watching. And it showed the religious extremists that we have in our own country. We always point our fingers at other ones, but we have them right here at home. So this is a huge problem. And part of the job of the president is to protect our country against the extremists, the terrorists and everything in our country, as well as the ones outside. So we've got them right here and we got to stop it. So anyway, if there's room for negotiation with the people that are in power in other countries, then we do need to sit down. The problem is that the extremists need to understand that there's more than one Christianity out there. There's many schisms. And, not only that, I mean, there was Judaism, and then there was the schism to Christianity, or I should say Catholicism. And then Catholicism schismed into Protestantism and then all the other isms out there as far as Jesus followers go. And then from that came Islam and a schism there. And even Islam has its own schisms going on. So we've got all these religions battling it out, and all the leaders of a lot of the countries are the extremists of their own religion. And until we can get a lot of the extremists out, we won't have peace. But my goal is to bring peace. And maybe if there's a way to communicate with these people who are in power, who are highly religious, I would like to sit down and discuss it and find a solution. But first of all, we have to call for a ceasefire. Nothing can be done unless there's a ceasefire.
Well, it's interesting how you bring up that people are advocating for the return of Jesus. I could be wrong, but what I was taught, Jesus was going to decide when he was going to return. He didn't need man's help to bring him back. So, but people will think what they want to think, and people are going to say what they're going to say. Jorge, you're about to say something.
Right, I do. I think it comes to 2 points right now. What Susan's trying to say, or hopefully I can sum this up, is that there's 3 truths out there. There's our personal truths that we love and hold, which is conflicting against political truths that we have to acknowledge and accept. And then that also conflicts with objective data that can be converted into objective truth. What is the data saying? Where is it pointing? Where did it come from? How does it stand? And where's it going to go? If understanding these truths and displacing ourselves from it, and don't bring that objective truth close to us, we can make good, sound decisions. as I think you just mentioned also, I think there's a complete representation of what religion is. You know, King Solomon's temples in Jerusalem. You got the mosque right on top of it. You got every religious organizations is at the same point, fighting for the same rights. You know, Christianity is about loving thy neighbor, treating others as you want to be treated.
Let me stop
And
you here,
so,
Jorge. If you can wrap it up in 30 seconds, because this is becoming a religious scholar debate, I need to get to the next question, but wrap up what your point is going to be.
so what I'm just saying is, whatever these religions are doing, it's the same ethical placement. The pivoting point is that what's going to be good for everybody, you know, is to hold back our own personal beliefs and look at the objective data and where's it pointing.
Okay. All right. Next question. The political mismanagement of the U.S.-Mexico border has been going on for decades. One of the concerns is that multitudes of non-citizens are entering the U.S. and using up services they are not paying for, nor are they entitled to. The latest worry is that people from Central and South America and beyond are using the border as a way to do financial and social harm to the U.S. On the other side, the other argument is that history shows the U.S. grew stronger because of immigration, and the origins of this current problem remains the same: people looking for asylum or work. You are the president, Susan. What is your solution for this?
We can do with Mexico two things. We can see if they want to become a state. If they want to prepare themselves to join our union, and therefore then all their citizens will be U.S. citizens. So that's one opportunity. So we can sit down at the table and talk about that and make a treaty. But the real problem is I was down there earlier this year checking out the border. And currently our Border Patrol, they're asking, are you an American, to people crossing the border? And the problem with that question is because a lot of them live in the Americas, they're American. So we have to stop using that blanket word for our citizens. You have to ask, where's your passport? Actually, that's what you should be asking. No one from Mexico should be crossing the border. No one from any country should be crossing the border without a passport. No passport, you go back, period. I don't know why we're letting them in anyway. But Mexicans are allowed because we're not at war with them. We don't have a closed border with them. They can come in for up to 3 months and be here. What they do have to do is they have to be able to afford to be here. So what I've seen in other countries is they've asked people to show that they have a bank account so that they can pay for their vacation in wherever. Or if they're coming for work, they should already have an invite from an employer to come in. So I recommend, if we don't have this sort of system set up, we put a job board up by the Mexican borders, right by the crossing, the proper crossing, and people can go and find a job if they're really looking for it. They call them up, they say, hey, I want that job. And then they fill out the paperwork. The guy comes down and brings them across, and then it's all legal. But we have to start making this legal. The other thing, too, that I noticed is, the amount of legal people allowed to come in from all the countries from around the world. The amount of legal people allowed in is very low. So we need to probably double that for every country and let them come in legally. They pay their the fees to come in, and they fill out the paperwork, and then they come in and they do, if they're coming for vacation or coming for work or coming to stay. I just want you legal, and then as far as the illegals, we have to come up with a solution. I'm worried. At first I was thinking sending them all back. But if we do, we might not have restaurants open. We might not have roads being built. We have a lot of people from other countries doing a lot of our infrastructure work. And so we do need them. So maybe there's an easier way without deporting them that we can help them to become legal here. Maybe just have an amnesty where they fill out a form and then it's done.
Okay. Jay, your solution.
Job applications at the border, Susan, really? Listen, we've already got a system in place, and immigrants just need to go and follow the system. There are actually visas. If you didn't know, there are visas for so many different visas exist. There's visas in which the United States actively seeks those that have skills, scientists, engineers, and what have you, to come into the United States. They even have visas for non U.S. citizens to come here to the United States to go and work in, for manual labor, whether it be, picking apples off trees and working on the farms. That already exists. The problem we have is the amount of people that are coming across the borders is too much for us to handle, and it's not fair. Our country should have a border. Your house right now has a door and windows. Everyone has a car with doors on it. Why does the greatest nation not have a border? Why can't we protect ourselves? Why do we continue with a porous border? And it's not just Mexico, right? Mexico is just one half of the issue. Their immigrants are coming from both sides, from the northern part of the country as well, from Canada. As a matter of fact, we had over 189,000 that came from Canada in 2021. And that's a 73% increase from, it increased 73% in 2022. And then in total, it was 597% increase from 2021 as far as the amount of immigrants that were coming into our country. Now, that's a lot of folks. And so how do you fix the problem?
All right, so Jay, what you're suggesting is a hardening of the southern border.
When I become the next president, number one, we're going to finish the wall. Number two, we're going to go and revamp this immigration system where we have the revolving door with people coming into our country, and then all of a sudden they're deported from our country, and then they wind up coming back in. The way to handle that is to use technology to our advantage, which we have, and also to ensure that we get the biometrics of folks that are coming in here illegally and causing, and creating crimes and committing crimes in our country. With biometrics, they certainly won't be able to go return into our country once deported, because we'll have, the fingerprints and their biometrics done. So I think the solution is, number one, having a strong relationship and rapport with Mexico, which we have, and they're our second largest trading partner, so we need them, obviously. And so I think it's going to be a win-win situation. We just need to go and strengthen the existing ties that we have with Mexico and deal with the border crisis.
Okay. All right, Jorge, you've heard Susan and Jay. Your turn.
They're sinking the ship, is the bottom line. America can't handle all these people at one time. We got to enforce the immigration laws, and there's got to be consequential ramifications on what's going on right now. They can't just be coming over as they feel free and want to, just because Biden wants to buy their votes. This is why everything's going on. I propose rehabilitation centers at the borders so we can redirect these immigrants from trying to come across to trying to come in properly, so they can have training and ethics brought in place so they can become true Americans and develop society the way Americans needs to be developed. Have some understanding here. I think the other main part is that the cartel is against national security now. We're ignoring that they're taking all these people's money before they even get here, that they're bringing in drugs, and there's relationships between our leaders and Mexico for allowing this development to even occur and happen at the rate and at the level that it is. So going into Mexico and fighting these cartels and stopping this push that they're bringing forth these immigrants into America and then blaming the immigrants. Everybody wants to come to America because it's the free, the brave, and there's opportunity here. I don't blame them for that. But the reality is they're sinking the ship. We can't handle it. And that's just the bottom line.
So basically your belief is, as explained, I believe, by either Susan or Jay, is that there should be a hardening of the border with your added perspective of doing offensive moves against cartels.
Exactly. Without this offensive, it's going to continue. Just is the bottom line. So we got to take action because we're sitting on the fence, we're watching it, and we're blaming we're pointing our finger in the wrong. Look at the data. We're not looking at the damn data and where's it pointing and where's it coming from. You know, so there's a loss of money. There's too many people. That money should have been into those people's pockets.
Okay. All right. Very well. Now we're going to ask some conversational questions in which all four of us will toss ideas and thoughts around. But let me set up the scenario for you. This one deals with the current state of affairs and how we speak to each other. Once upon a time, drafting up legislation in government was a passionate exercise that relied on thoughtful discussion and disagreement. Now that seems to be a bygone era. Politicians no longer speak in terms that are disputes about pending legislative policy. Often, their statements are meant to personally demonize anyone who disagrees with them. Once upon a time, lying was met with consequences. Today, there is such a constant stream of lying, not to mention willful misinformation, it's difficult to keep a track of it. So often these outrageous comments are spotlighted in mainstream media and by extension social media. This cycle makes it even more difficult for the average citizen to follow, let alone properly determine who is being genuine and truthful in creating legislation. How do we reach to this point? And how would you fix it? Susan.
Well, I have a lawsuit pending with the Supreme Court right now, exactly on this concept that our government, I don't even want to say our government, it's the Democrats and the Republicans of old who have decided the U.S. citizens are not smart enough to make our own judgments on voting and on a lot of other things. And they have took it upon themselves to just keep us out of the loop entirely, you know. And that's what I've been running for president since 2020. And I have been all over our country in almost every state. And I've talked to so many people, and we all have the same problem. We don't feel heard by our government. We don't feel heard by our representatives. And when I say government, technically, it's not really the government that's not listening. Our government has been taken over by the Democrats and the Republicans, and they're not letting anybody else in. So we have been taken over by these.
So you think that the reason why that is because they're trying to essentially create control? Because a lot of the news that I watch, the news clips, the little TikTok videos, are when congressmen are basically insulting each other. When did that start, and how do you end it? Or is this, unfortunately, the way things are now?
It's because they've got us where they want us, and they don't want anything to change, and they want to keep their paycheck. So they have to look busy. And so by arguing and pointing fingers at other people,
that's looking busy.
That makes them look busy. And when they have all these, so when a law is proposed and it goes through Congress, you know, it's one side against the other, and then there's always the same discussions, and nothing gets done, right? I mean, that's what I've heard. We need new people in power.
Yeah, watching the House or the Senate in session is almost like watching what's going on in Parliament. The yelling, the screaming is just incredible. I've seen sessions in Africa where they're actually getting into fisticuffs while doing business of the people. It's really outlandish. It's embarrassing, and that's just another point where I was trying to make regarding what's occurring in Congress. Congress sees the American people and the people they represent within their respective districts and their states as money. They see as us U.S. citizens as dollar signs. That's all. That's the reason why you see so much scrambling going on, even at the county level, where people are scrambling to go and map districts to see if they can get more people within their districts, which equates to more money. So there's a lot of greed up there.
Well, there's also the issues, if you've seen any local school board meeting,
Exactly.
Those get ridiculous as well. Not just from the people on the school board, but the people that are making comments, the general public that are making comments about it as well.
I believe that a sitting president, as well as a congressman or senator, should have a higher standard than what they're displaying to the American public now. They should hold themselves to a higher standard. And what I mean by a higher standard is not the big education, but also how they present themselves to the American people, how even though they're at odds insofar as like how to go and fix a problem, but just to respect each other and not with all the back and forth, infighting that occurs. When it's all said and done, trust me, they are behind closed doors, both Republicans and Democrats, deciding upon how much of how much of that slice of pie they're going to get from the American people. Either way, they're making money.
Jorge?
Level of consciousness, their emotional tone scale. When you're at anger, you're going to break stuff and you're going to lie and cheat. It's obvious. They can't be objective. They're using their personal truths. They can't even look at the political truths, let alone at the data that's not transparent. There is no inclusion by the United States. I want to get something real quick here. We're not a democracy, okay? We have freedom, but we don't have liberty. Let me explain something as a federal judge explained to me, is that when we go to court, we're an undocked vessel, trespassing in a harbor. When you open your mouth without being docked, you're babbling and you're creating perjury against yourself. The only way to be docked is by paying a toll. And you must pay that toll. And that's with an attorney. They hold the rights and the authority. The Commonwealth does not have the authority to defend, protect themselves. We have to pay for it. Is that American? I don't think so.
So how do we take care of the status of the way how we are all speaking to each other nowadays?
So we have to have common ground. They're going to be split. They're angry. They're upset at each other. They're pulling their hairs. Like they're using their emotion, their small brains reflecting off their egos on their emotional state. I propose, and a lot of people might not agree with this, but I use AI a lot. It's very empathetic. It's sympathetic. It can see the data, where you came, where you are, and where you're going to go. If these guys can't come together and look at the data right and have artificial intelligence do it for us, because these guys, obviously, we're getting nowhere, and we're slamming right up against the wall.
So you believe a more colder view of processing information would help?
We have to be nonpartisan about everything. We gotta look at.
Okay, I apologies to my grammar teacher. It's more cold, not more colder. So my apologies for that. Here's my second question to all of you. You can talk about this amongst yourselves. It was May 1960 when a monumental event occurred. Birth control was approved by the FDA. That product revolutionized centuries of gender politics between men and women. For the first time, a woman could decide if she would become pregnant. Many saw it as a long-awaited freedom and enhancement of women's rights. Others saw it as a drawback, as an assault on social and religious values that many societies were built on. Today, with major legal decisions dealing with abortion and contraception, there is a fundamental question that needs to be asked. When does life begin? And is a woman allowed to end it? Jay.
When does life begin? I think it's not really a difficult question to answer, quite frankly. Did you know that there is a flash of light that occurs when a sperm reaches an egg? And they say that's caused by zinc that's released. But 5 to 6 days after this fertilization occurs, mitosis occurs, right? When the first sperm reaches the center of the egg, it sets off a chain reaction and doesn't even allow the other sperm to touch the egg. And so after mitosis and blastocytosis occurs, this embryo grows and in the uterus until delivery. So the beginning of life, people believe that's our belief. Our stance is life begins at conception. Now, if I were to go and take a photograph of me when I was 1 month old and a photograph of me that occurred yesterday, they're one and the same person. It's the same Jay Torres, but at a different stage, right? So I've evolved essentially from that all the way from conception to now. It's the same Jay Torres. So now what they're doing is splitting hairs. Say, okay, well, at what point are you actually a human being? So where did this all come from? Well, you have to go back to the original verdict from the Roe versus Wade back in 1973. when they talked about trying to identify exactly what is the definition of a person. Right? The court said that there was no indication that the Constitution uses the word person where it meant to include fetuses, and they rejected Texas' argument that a fetus should be considered a person with a legal and constitutional right to live. Now, according to the U.S. Constitution, all of us have the inalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And the first word there, life. And so, if conception and life begins at if life begins at conception, then there shouldn't even be any argument afterwards.
So it is conception for you.
Absolutely.
Life begins at conception. Susan, question goes to you. When does life begin?
So life begins at conception. That's true. But all life that begins at conception, I'm going to say 70% of that life that begins at conception dies before it even gets to 3 months long. So miscarriages happen a lot. And this is something that nobody is talking about. And I don't know why it's not talked about. But I am a mother, and I have tried many times to get pregnant, and I know how many miscarriages happen. So I will say in the Bible it says life begins with the first breath. So when is the first breath? And then in the Constitution, it says life begins at birth. You are born, and then you are a U.S. citizen. And that's when life begins according to our Constitution. So as far as I'm concerned, we are talking about being president of a government of the United States. So that means life begins at birth. Before birth, as long as it's in the woman's body, it's part of her body. This thing can also kill her. So she has the final say on this. Has been happening for women for millenniums, since we've been human beings. Even in the animal kingdom, it's up to the woman. The women, if they
So why the current thinking of restricting those rights with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and now with certain portions of I think it's IVF that's now being looked against? Why do you think that sentiment is going on now?
It's always been. So for, I've been, I was 18 a long time ago when I started paying attention to elections, and abortion has always been always been talked about in life and all of this. The thing is, we're using the word abortion wrong. So there's the pill that you can take to abort. That's new. That's only been around for like 5 years. So on the other hand, in the Bible, there is a section that tells you it tells the priest what to do, what kind of potion to give a woman who's pregnant who doesn't want to be pregnant. So abortion is approved in the Bible. It's there. And according to a lot of religions, abortion is legal. So I think this whole topic, it's a private discussion between a man and a woman and their doctor. And if it's an underage child, then it's also with the parents. But the final decision is with the woman, because she's got the responsibility of raising it for the next 20 years. You don't birth a 20-year-old. I've never seen it happen. So if that can happen and it's birthed and it knows its alphabet and everything, then hey, yes, no more abortions. But until that day, as long as it takes 20 years to raise a child, and even that's not enough, as we know, it takes even longer. But it takes 20 years, certainly. It's not birthing and not birthing is the woman's choice.
Jorge, your thoughts on this?
The 14th Amendment, free and equal will to all men. So we also want to look at responsibility, because people, young or old.
So the original question is, Jorge, is when does life begin, and is the woman allowed to end it?
I think life begins in the premortal life. Before we were here, do you have a soul? Why is it here, and where's it going to go? Is the question. So your premortal life, your mortal life, and your afterlife, does it mean anything? And I don't think a lot of people take this into perspective in their own perceptions. Is that
so? What you're saying is there's this disembodied energy, the mortal life, there is this child that's being formed in a womb, that that energy goes into that womb, into that body, now becomes a mortal life, and then
It really
it gets
does.
born. Okay, all right.
So the responsibility.
At what point does can the woman? Do you believe a woman should be able to end that life if she decides to?
Now, having that right to kill or take that opportunity away is going to be her judgment and when her day comes. So giving this is what conflicts, is that a constitution is being looked at, I think, at two different perspectives. One is saying free and equal rights to all, but then does that give me the right to kill because I created it? Was that creation just done by the woman because she's having the baby? I don't think so. I think we need to
Well,
respect life.
technically, no.
interject
There's
here and
actually
say
two people
that
involved with
it's
it.
contrary to the Bible, and it's
So
contrary to the U.S. Constitution, both that we live under. It's contrary to the rule of law. It's contrary to the U.S. Constitution. It's contrary to the Bible. Why is there a discussion about that? How?
And I disagree. It's in the Bible. The instructions on how to give an abortion are in the Bible. It tells
It's
exactly
very
what to
easy to
do.
read.
And if men don't like
that is not in the
abortion, they
Bible.
should get a vasectomy, because 100% a vasectomy is reversible. It causes no hormonal problems, and it would solve all the problems. If a man is vasectomized, you cannot create a baby, right? So then there's no question about it. There's no baby. It's time for men to pick up their responsibility.
Agreed.
No.
Agreed. Ultimately, it is a question of growing up and having a sense of responsibility of what you're about to do and the consequences thereof. Final question. It's a little bit lighthearted, but wanted to do so with this. Everybody has a hobby. Everybody has a thing they decompress with by doing or engaging in. So what movie, book, music, piece of art, or creative event, namely a hobby, would you recommend at this moment? For me, it's cooking. I love cooking. I love finding out new recipes, trying out new ways, see if I can replicate it, see if I can make it turn out. Not only is it creative, it's tasty, and it's relaxing. So, Jay, what do you do?
My hobbies consist of a myriad of things, but I think what I enjoy the most is art and painting. Maybe that comes from my New York City roots back in the 80s, painting these huge murals. I've actually painted murals in other countries, and it's a fabulous way to just release and express my limited artistic ability by painting beautiful murals. So that's what I enjoy doing.
Okay, Jorge, what do you do?
This is what I do.
Who let Charlie Parker in the room?
So, we got to express ourselves in a positive way. Put forth your spirit. Try something that you don't know how to do and learn how to do it. Our kids are putting their heads too much in social media. They get run over crossing the street. Play the piano, read a book. Spend some positive, time doing something productive. Make someone smile.
There you go. That's the way to look at it. Susan, what do you do?
Well, right now I'm enjoying swimming. I'm getting really back into it. The more and more I'm in West Virginia. So I moved a mobile home of mine up to this piece of land that I have that doesn't have running water. And so to shower, I got to go to the local swimming pool. And so I do a lot of swimming, and I'm enjoying it. So yeah, I swim and I get all the water I need, and it's not a problem. I love being in nature too. So I like walking around on my property there and taking care of it. I had somebody help me put a pond in, and now I've got some frogs coming, and it's exciting. I've got deer and squirrels and all sorts of things. So I like to go into nature also for peace and quiet.
That is all good to hear from you. Thank you all for joining me on this OPP presidential debate of 2024. For anyone listening or watching this, you can get more information on each one of these candidates if you go to OPP2024US.com. That's OPP2024US.com. There you will see standalone videos with each of the candidates and links to their websites where you can learn more about them and their platforms. Everyone, thank you very much for participating, and we'll see each other soon.